Alrighty. Hi there, TCC. Welcome to the video series for writing, reading, research, and transferable skills across the disciplines. My name is Yasmin Jahal, and I teach here in the Writing Studies program. I'm joined today here with our lead tutor, Lindsay, from the Writing Center. And to start off our series, we are interviewing Jennifer Karshna, Department Chair of Early Childhood Education. So our first question for you, Jennifer, is tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you teach? What is your favorite course to teach? And what is one fun fact about you? And I'll put these questions in the chat as we go through.
Okay. Well, I'm Jennifer Karshna, as you very nicely said, and I am the Early Childhood Education and Elementary Education Program Chair and Professor. So I really have taught all of the classes, and now I teach a select number of classes because I can't teach them all. That would not be logistically possible. Um, And I'm supposed to tell you, oh, my favorite course to teach. I have two types of courses I like. I like the methods courses, like math, technology, and science for children, and outdoor learning for children, and curriculum development. Because that's what I like as an early childhood. I love developing curriculum for children and really for adults. That's the fun. That's a big fun part for me. And then to see what students do with it. Um, and I also like teaching my practicum courses, where there's a field placement and students get to bring things into, the real live early childhood classroom. And I'm going to speak mostly about early childhood because those are the classes I teach. I don't teach in the elementary ed program. I'm just the chair, for that and facilitate for the other instructors. Fun fact about me is, I think it's a fun fact. I have 5 younger sisters within 9 years, and they are quite fun.
That is so wonderful. Oh my God, that's got to be so much fun to have like such a sisterhood. Oh my gosh, I love that. Thank you for answering that first question. So our second question is, I'm gonna actually put this in the chat and read it. Thank you for being patient with me. All right. So for students taking a class in your discipline, what would you like them to know about writing, reading, and research in your field? Does writing, reading, and research play a role in your teaching?
Yes, it does. And all of those things are used in the field of early childhood. Let's just start with research because that one seems like it's not used, and direct research where you're collecting data and you're doing a literature review and all of that. That's not the type of research that most early childhood teachers and directors and folks that work in that field do. If you move on and you want to do some writing, like teacher research writing, you would do that. But the research is looking up information, like maybe secondary research, finding out things about you have a child who's has a special health condition in your classroom and you want to learn more about it. I mean, you know the child, that's most important, but you want to learn a little bit more about that health condition and what you should do. Could be something very uncommon. So you have to be able to know how to gather information, and then that brings gather it and use it in the way you need to use it, save it as you need to save it or not save it. Those are, I think, research-based decisions in when I've done research. Those are some things that have to happen. So it's about gathering data and useful data and sharing data, sharing information. So there's reading and writing, so that implies reading. You also have to be able to read any communications that come out from your employer, your director, if you're an assistant, a lead teacher, if you are working on an individualized education team and they're special educators or speech therapists, you have to be able to read that IEP. You have to be able to understand what they're saying. And that reading writing, listening, talking, all of it in my mind goes together. And so those are skills you do every day. Parents and families walk in the door. Um, you can hear a number of different things. You have to be able to talk with them. You have to read. They may hand you a note. Um, you may get newsletters. You may have to write a newsletter. There's apps that are being required. Bright Wheel is one of them. You have to be able to use that app, and the app does require reading and writing into the app. So that is all used. And then to add in children's language and literacy development, writing and role modeling writing and the reasons we write things down are important. Children see that. Children learn from the adults around them and what the adults around them are doing. Children at 4, 5, actually really at 1 and 2, because there's a emergent literacy progression, right, in their own way. And you have to be able to read it and read stories to them and role model and write words and label your classroom. So there's all kinds of it. It's less essay type writing and more of that functional, answering questions directly, writing little anecdotes, writing observation notes that are clear and descriptive. So there's lots of writing and reading, and you also need that confidence to read those stories to children. All children, maybe all of us, need stories read out loud with nice pictures.
I like that. All right.
Sounds like it's all very directly applicable. So
It is
so this
directly applicable. That is right. And it's not like what we think of often in academic settings. It's very functional.
I like that. Just letting them know it's functional. Like, I like the idea of descriptive, especially when you're watching kids and, you're speaking with parents. There's all of those skills of like those very, communication skills that we, teach in our field. And then it's like, how does that transfer into that setting? You have to always know your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So my next question is, what does effective writing, research, and comprehension look like in your field?
Well, I think you've already started answering that for me. You have to know your audience. So, if you have a family member that is maybe just learning English, you're gonna have to explain things in a way that works for them. Or if you have a family member that's not really is a little upset, you have to know how to say things in a way that they can take in. Or if it's a hard thing, like a child having a difficult time in the classroom, maybe a possible developmental delay, you have to have a way of communicating that, both verbally and in writing. And you also have to have a way of documenting things, those observation notes. So effective writing, research, and comprehension, again, is very functional. You have to be able to understand what's written down for you, and then know that audience, and then be able to take that appropriate action, whatever it may be. It also is knowing how to communicate with children and speak in a way that's role modeling appropriate language and reading. So when you're reading a story, you don't want to read it like this. You're going to have behavioral issues. But more importantly, that's not going to help children with their comprehension. So it's, again, it kind of relates to my earlier answer. It's really understanding your audience, as you said, and what the type of writing or reading or verbal response is. And sometimes that's more formal, sometimes it's more informal. It's always with understanding of the person and the content. I might also add in, it requires a confidence. It's because if you're wondering about it, that's not going to help a parent or a child. You have to be able to be very clear and confident.
Yeah. I really appreciate that answer because I always tell my students, like, do you speak to engineers the same way you would speak to a kindergartner? If I ask you to explain this one situation, how would you do it? What voice or what tone would you use? That's really good to hear. That's really emphasized in here. So thank you.
Yes, and I think you made me think of this
Mm,
paraphrasing. We paraphrase for children when
mm,
we're helping them understand something in a book or in the directions. You have to give directions a lot. Um, Children need to move from point A to point B or be able to do the activity. And you have to choose words. It's not that we wouldn't use new vocabulary with children, but if you say it in a way that just,
mm,
or to a family member, in
mm,
whatever it is, there's just, you have to be able to know that audience and be able to speak, write,
mm,
and comprehend in a variety of ways and apply that.
mm,
And apply it for children because, especially if they're screaming and crying, you need to be able to say the right words in the right way.
mm. Yeah, I always say students are like chameleons, like you have to change your colors depending on where you're at, who you're talking to. This also made me think, can you give us an example of, so if in ECE they're writing descriptive observations, can you give us an example of what an effective observation is versus something that's not effective as like from the assessment point of view as the educator?
Oh, yes. And I will preface that with writing objective observations is very difficult. So,
Mm,
and I see this often because it's a learning process. So anyone who's listening to this who may have done this, that's okay. We're all learning. We
mm,
all have to kind of practice this. It's pretty easy to write things like, she was really happy. She liked playing with her friends in the dramatic play center. She
mm,
talked. She
mm,
talked to her friends.
mm,
That is an example of that's not clear enough
mm,
because I could have a different idea than Lindsay, than all of us of
mm,
what really happened there. The picture could be different for each one of us.
mm,
What would be more effective is Susie came into the dramatic play center. She smiled.
mm,
She said to her friends, how can I play? I'm going to be the mommy. I want to be the mommy.
mm,
Let's have 5 sisters.
mm,
And then Susie laughed. All the children were laughing.
mm.
I'll just end there because now I'm going to make up a whole story and we don't need a whole story here.
Like, please
It's
keep going.
quotes,
Yeah.
it's capturing the quotes, it's writing just what you see them doing, not deciding that Susie was happy. But if you say she laughed, or um, if you use exclamation marks in your writing, so punctuation is also important,
Yeah.
and you capture exactly what happened,
Mm,
then that gives clear data.
yeah. I
Yeah,
really
that's so funny. I'm sorry.
go ahead,
It,
go ahead.
it, it reminds me of writing police reports. You have
Mm,
to do the same thing. It always has to be very objective. It has to be what you see,
mhm.
um,
Mhm.
without any kind of interpretation.
Yeah,
And that also is, another type of writing students have to do in the classroom is incident accident reports.
mhm,
You can't write, she was upset. You have to write what happened.
mhm.
It's kind of similar to that
Yeah,
police report. You have to write what happened.
yeah. It's like taking your voice out of that and your experience and then centering on this on the child in front of you like that. Like for me, just hearing that, I know how to support students in your discipline. I'm like, hey, you got to be very concise and say what you saw, not what you personally feel.
That can come later as part of assessment. We talk about it, objective, subjective, but
Mhm,
we also use the terms
mhm,
descriptive and interpretive. So
mm,
when you're interpreting, that's
mm,
later for the assessment. You need the clear data
mhm,
for, which in its own way is a form of research, right?
Yeah, it's like that live research. All right, Lindsay, I guess you have this next question.
Yes, so we're gonna kind of change it up a little bit. This one is focused on tutors, and it's a three-part question, so I'm just going to read it all. What do you recommend to students that are struggling to understand writing, reading, and research in your field? Is there anything specific you want our tutors to know about your courses? And what can tutors do to empower and help students feel confident navigating your courses?
Okay, so that is question number 4, correct? I've made some notes. I guess I'm role modeling reading, writing, and comprehension here. And maybe I would just start with that. When possible, read the directions, read them a second time, read whatever it is you're trying. You know, often students struggle with direct assignment directions, which are not easy to write. I will not say mine are always clear, but you have to read it and think about it a little bit. Sometimes you don't understand right away. So I would say accept where you're at. We're all at wherever we're at. We all are in, I think, I'm making an assumption for everyone, but based on everything I know, and I live with someone who's authored 5 books and been an editor, so I've been around this writing world. It's a continuous process of improvement. Writing and reading it's complex. It's quite complex. So accept wherever you're at, practice, and seek help when you need it, or seek help. A good proofreader, someone to read your work. It's hard to know what you've said, and does it make sense because you know it so well in your head. So for tutors, I would say we generally in ECE, and I think in elementary ed too, it's less essay type writing and it's more of the functional writing of being able to fill out forms, answer short answer questions, write a newsletter, create a sentence and a paragraph, cohesive sentence and cohesive paragraph. Know how to be brief when needed, or add those descriptive details, more descriptive detail when needed, like in an observation or an incident report. No one's going to read a 3-page accident report. So, so helping students do that, I think it may be helpful for tutors to know that citing work is very important, but that's also a very difficult skill. And there are times in which, oh boy, I'm thinking of some of my colleagues. I hope they don't get upset about this. There are times in which a citation is not needed. It's not needed on an incident accident report. It's not needed necessarily, depending on what you're writing about in a newsletter. It all depends on how you're writing. So for tutors, that's for some students, that idea of citing is very new. So, and styles, and we use APA in education. So it's important to know the concept and then the mechanics of doing it. And I think we're probably, and for many of the students at ECE, it's learning the concept of that. And I think support with confidence building. It is quite a risk to put oneself out there and do writing, especially with peers or with reading stories in a classroom when other adults walk in. That's hard for a lot of people. So help build the confidence and encourage, as appropriate, students to ask questions of their instructors. There might be a time when it's a question for the instructor, or you might ask the instructor first before you're coming to the tutoring center. So now I'm hoping I answered all your questions.
Yeah, I think you hit them all. This next one is a skills question. What foundational skills would you like your students to walk in with? And what do you wish you had known when you had started writing, reading, and research in your own field?
Okay, so there, many of the ECE classes don't have prereqs, but it's important to know how to write a sentence, write a paragraph, and have some basic spelling, and to have an understanding that or a willingness to build the confidence to do so and enhance your skills. So be able to, a willingness to self-assess. I'm not very good at this. I thought I could do it, but this isn't what, sometimes it feels like we know how to do stuff because once you learn more, you realize there's a lot more to it. So those kinds of skills, I'd like people to come to the class with, and an understanding of themselves. This is not really an easy thing I'm asking for students. No, if you're not ready to do that, if you're not ready to write short answers, to read things, if you don't really feel you can do that, then take one of those basic ed classes, or if it's in English, take an ESL class. Let yourself practice. There is nothing wrong with that. So I guess I'm asking for a little self-assessment before you sign up for the class. And just know that you're going to have to do some writing and reading and comprehension. And it's very stressful for the student if they are not quite ready for that. Most are, but some people are not for various reasons. And what I wish I knew is I wish I had the understanding that I have now of the different types of writing and how to apply them. I would always wish that I know more about APA and citations, because that is complicated. And I have learned a lot. I have done a research project and I did all my own citations, but I wished I had a better understanding of what I spoke about earlier in why we're doing that, and that there are different styles, and the basics that underlying the underlying concepts of that. So, and maybe some organizational skills with pulling together information. There's lots of information. I knew how to highlight and do all those things, but just pulling together that functional information, it can get overwhelming. And so any organizational skills, I would have been happy to have a few more before I started around writing and gathering information.
Thank you.
All right, so I get the next question. I'm going to put it in the chat as I read it. So how do you learn about or ask students to reflect on prior knowledge your students bring to your course? How do you help students identify and describe the knowledge they have learned in your course might be relevant to other contexts, especially as they move through their academic pathways and into the workforce?
So self-assessment and reflection is a key part of teaching, as I'm sure you both know, but it is so I would think all, I think I can confidently say all have some form of self-reflection. In many classes, there's a prior self-assessment, which might be an inventory, like a background knowledge probe, in which you rate what you know, and then at the end of the quarter, you rate it again and answer some questions. There's a course in which that's happening all throughout. After you do each assignment, then you reassess, what did you learn? How do you think you would use this in the classroom? So often that the self-assessment comes with either at the time or later in the quarter, and how would you use this in the classroom? Throughout the ECE classes, that practical application of what you've learned is always a part of what we're trying to teach and what we're trying to have people do. So it's very much applied knowledge. And people have to write about it and talk about it in videos and things. And I do, at the end of the class, of every class, there's usually some sort of self-assessment that gets at what did you learn and what you're going to do with it. And I would say sometimes that is, now you've learned that. I've gotten to know the students throughout the quarter, and because I teach many of them, I know a lot of the students, I'm their advisor. I might say, now, this will help you in future classes. This could help you in future classes and in your work with children. So I try to give that feedback as well and draw that connection. But usually there's some sort of writing or some sort of assessment at the beginning and at the end.
I really like the emphasis on self-assessment. I think a lot of the students, when they take a course or, we give them course outcomes, like this is what you're going to have. And then it's like, but what are you going to do with it? And I think having it, like, I love to see that opportunity in the classroom where they're really grappling with that. So I really appreciate just hearing that. All right. Let's see. It's like you have the next question.
Yes. This next one is about technology and more specifically about AI. What is the role of AI in your classroom? How do you see students using AI effectively if you do, in fact, encourage them to use it? And does your industry require that students learn to use AI tools?
Oh boy. Well, we're going to just do our best with that. So AI, now I'm getting to assistive technology that I just read an article about for children and communication devices. So at this time, the ECE program is saying don't use AI in the ECE classes. And the reason being is because the idea is to practice talking, writing, reading, and that requires the thinking. And we just don't have room to teach how to effectively use AI. So we're not ready for that yet. And I say yet because I think it's going to have to happen at some point, and we're going to have to study how this is happening. It's going to happen with young children. It already is on some levels with those the technology that little children use and what it's telling them. But for right now, we're just leaving AI out so that students can really engage with the course material. It is okay to make mistakes. We're not looking for polished essays. This is a prof tech program, professional technical program in which you're training to be with children. And another reason is because you wouldn't have time to use in AI in the way that it's kind of being used from what I know in classes and stuff. You don't really have time. You have to answer questions on the spot. You might, if you're writing a newsletter, have time to do that. But if you have to write your classroom newsletter, but you have to be able to read that back and know that's accurate before you put it out there. And so you still need that reading, writing, comprehension skill. AI maybe in the long run could write it for you, but you have to practice that reading, writing, and comprehension. So, and it's quite intimidating when another adult asks about child development, a complex thing, especially around like language literacy and cognitive development. It's so complex, and language literacy is such a process. So often adults want children to write the letters and do them in the order of the alphabet. And that's not really how children learn it. A letter is a symbol, and until they're ready to think symbolically, they're not ready for that. So when you're answering a question to a parent of a 2-year-old, you don't have time to look up on a device how to answer, because that person wants an answer right then and there, and they might be mad at you because you did not have the children write the letters in the classroom and the children are playing. So it's so at this time, we're not using AI, and maybe someday we'll get there.
I appreciate I'm on the same perspective of not yet, but we need to learn more about it first.
We need to learn more, and I'm not ready to teach about it, to be honest with you. I'm a little afraid of it, and I also know from my own experiences, I had said earlier, when I was working on my dissertation throughout my whole grad school, I typed out every citation. I did not look it up on the internet. I didn't do any of that. I typed it all out. And it made a difference. I knew what I was doing. I knew how to proofread my work. I could see the errors. I could see those types of errors. And I know from experience, when you do things with like writing and reading, it does help. And I think it takes a level of skill to know how to edit your own work. And then AI could be useful for editing your own work, but you have to have that level of skill in order to do it. And I don't know how to teach about it, and I'm kind of afraid of it, really. I don't know what's going to happen when I have that thing tell me stuff.
I'm in the same boat. And, again, I appreciate because in ECE, it's about it's about being personal. It's about being, humanistic. And when we think of AI and artificial intelligence, it's like that line is two different worlds. And it's especially, you have to be able to answer, like you said, on the spot. You can't be like, wait, one moment, I got to ask AI. No, you have to have those human skills.
You have to have, and even if you don't know the answer, you have to know how to give enough of an answer and then say, I'll get back to you, because you're expected to know so much, and not everyone can know. I mean, child development is pretty complex, but it's being able, and I think it all relates to that confidence as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like the theme of confidence, building that. So I have one last question. So there's anything I didn't ask that you want to cover, anything you would like our students to know?
I can't think. I think you've covered probably at 3 a.m. I'll think of something and I won't call you at that time. But I think just that general idea of that real functional writing, and that allowing oneself to be where they're at so they can move forward, and being confident. And it really is, it's really fun when you gain those skills with being able to write effectively, and you see, I think it can be an example from that I've experienced. I wrote something and then years later, I don't know, I found it later, either on my computer or someone gave it to me. I said, I used to do consulting work at early childhood programs, and they said, well, this is from you, Jennifer. This is your handout from the training. And I looked at it and said, did I really write this? Oh my goodness, I did a pretty good job there. It's a gratifying feeling, and it also helps a person feel more in control of their teaching in their field and their classes. So I think that parting message means allow yourself to accept yourself and move forward, and know it all works out. It's all beneficial to enhance your skills.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. I'm so glad we started off the series with you. You just really energized us. I could speak for myself, but Lindsay,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you. I didn't realize I was first.
Yeah, no, thank you for going first. I'm going to stop the recording before we let you go.
Okay.
Recording.